All right, let's kick off another deep dive. Today we're focusing on AMD, the semiconductor company.
Big player, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And our main source for this is this really interesting article from Motley Fool. AMD stock just did something it hasn't done since 2023.
Cryptic.
I know, right? When I saw the title, I was like, okay, we got to dig into this.
Definitely piqued my curiosity, too.
So basically, it's saying that AMD's stock valuation, it's back at the same level it was in September 2023. But get this, their market cap has grown by $30 billion since then.
That's pretty wild. It's like, what's the market missing here?
Yeah. And the article dives into AMD's forward PE ratio.
Yes, the classic.
Right. I remember when we first started investing, PE ratios seemed like, I don't know.
Like some secret financial language?
Totally. Like, what even is that?
Yeah.
But honestly, it's pretty simple when you think about it.
Break it down for us.
Okay, so imagine you're buying a lemonade stand.
Okay, I'm with you.
So the forward PE ratio is basically comparing how much you're paying for that lemonade stand to how much profit you think it's going to make next year. So a higher PE means investors are willing to pay more for each dollar of those future earnings.
Right, because they're optimistic. They think, oh, this lemonade stand's going to be booming.
Exactly. So in AMD's case, their forward PE was kind of all over the place.
Sounds volatile.
Yeah. It started at 24.6 in September 2023. Then it shot up to 53.8. And now it's back down to 25.6.
It's like a round trip back where it started.
Yeah.
But AMD is worth way more now.
Exactly. So that's the big question. Why is AMD worth so much more now, even though their PE is basically back to square one? To answer that, we got to look closer at AMD's performance in 2024. They have like a bunch of different business units, right?
Mm-hmm. You've got data centers, gaming, embedded systems.
And are they all doing well?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
The data center business, absolutely crushing it, grew like crazy, 94% growth, brought in $12.6 billion in revenue.
Whoa, that's massive.
It is. But their gaming and embedded systems, those have had some struggles.
Interesting. So they're winning big in one area, but facing some headwinds in others.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes you wonder if maybe the market is like focusing too much on those struggles and not appreciating the data center wins enough, especially since everyone is talking about AI these days.
Oh, absolutely.
And AMD is right there in the thick of it with those data center chips.
Oh, yeah. Huge demand for those powerful chips that AMD makes, thanks to the AI boom.
I mean, it's inevitable that people are starting to compare them to NVIDIA.
NVIDIA, the big dog.
Exactly.
It's funny how we love to, crown a champion in the tech world.
Yeah.
Like, who's going to be the next big thing?
Right.
But it seems like AMD is, well, they've still got a way to go before they reach that NVIDIA level of, scale.
Yeah, for sure.
But it feels like they're on a similar trajectory. At least that's my take. What do you think? The comparison makes sense. But I don't think we should underestimate AMD's data center success. I think this is a really big deal, not just like a little blip. This is like a fundamental shift in their business. And I think that shift is worth way more than what the market is currently giving them credit for.
Okay, now that's interesting. Are you saying that you think AMD might be undervalued right now?
Potentially, yeah. So let's go back to that $30 billion increase in AMD's market cap. If we break it down, it seems like the market is valuing their data center segment at roughly $30 billion. And they're basing that on a multiple of 10 times their operating income.
Okay, so on the surface, that sounds reasonable.
But I think there's more to the story.
What do you mean?
Well, think about NVIDIA, right? Their data center business is what launched their valuation into the trillions. And AMD, they're starting to snag those same big-time clients like Microsoft and Meta. These companies are putting their faith in AMD's technology.
So you're saying if NVIDIA's data center business is worth trillions, then AMD's, with its impressive growth and these huge clients, it could be worth a lot more than just $30 billion.
That's what I'm thinking. And that's why I'm saying that the current stock price might actually be a really good deal for investors who are thinking long-term.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this is so intriguing. But before we get ahead of ourselves and start dreaming of AMD taking over the world, shouldn't we talk about some of the challenges they face? Like, what could stand in their way? What are the potential roadblocks? Hashtag TTS The Deep Dive, episode 2025, ZO209, part 2 of 3.
Oh, yeah, there are definitely some things to think about. There's some hurdles to get it clear. They're not alone in this race. They're up against some tough competition.
Right.
Not just NVIDIA, the big guy.
Right, of course, not just the reigning champ.
But also all these new players jumping into the AI game.
You've mentioned this company, DeepSeek, before.
Yeah.
What's their deal? How could they mess with AMD's plans?
Well, DeepSeek is a Chinese startup. And they've been making a lot of noise with these bold claims. They say they're making AI models that are way cheaper to make, but without sacrificing performance. If they can actually do that, it could change everything.
Cheaper AI models. Okay, why is that so important?
Think about it. Imagine if all of a sudden cutting-edge AI was within reach for tons more businesses and researchers. That's the potential we're talking about with DeepSeek. This could force companies like AMD and NVIDIA to drop their prices or find new ways to stand out.
Wow, so every time a tech giant starts to get ahead, someone new pops up to shake things up.
That's the game.
Is this a threat to AMD? Or could it actually be a good thing?
It's hard to say right now.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that AMD used to be the underdog. They were going up against Intel, who seemed unbeatable.
Right, back in the day.
They know what it's like to fight an uphill battle.
That's a good point. They took on Intel, and they won some big victories. It proved they can innovate and adapt when things change fast, which is what tech is all about. What about DeepSeek's tech really catches your eye? What should AMD be doing to get ready for this potential shakeup?
I think what's really interesting is how DeepSeek is building their AI models. They're saying they're using a super efficient architecture that lets them get the same performance, but with way lower computing costs. If they can actually make that work, it could make it a lot easier for anyone to get into the AI game.
So it's not just about the chips, it's about everything that goes into making and using AI.
A whole ecosystem.
Does that mean AMD needs to start thinking less about hardware and more about software and services?
Definitely. The lines are getting blurry. Especially in AI, AMD already has a good foundation with their ROCm software platform, which helps optimize performance for their GPUs and accelerators.
Speaking of hardware, you mentioned their MI300 accelerators before.
Yeah.
What are those exactly, and why are they important in this whole AI arms race?
The MI300 is AMD's latest and greatest weapon for AI. It's a super advanced accelerator designed specifically for high-performance computing and AI workloads. Think of it like the engine that powers those giant data centers we were talking about.
So while DeepSeek is trying to make AI models more efficient, AMD is building the most powerful engines to run them.
You got it. It's a battle on multiple fronts. AMD's strategy is all about delivering that top-notch performance scalability and a complete software package. They're betting that companies and researchers who need to push the limits of AI will want what they have to offer.
Sounds like both AMD and DeepSeek are bringing something unique to the table. It makes you wonder how this competition will shape the future of AI. But let's bring it back down to earth for a second. What does all this mean for someone who's thinking about investing in AMD?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Investing in any tech company, especially one in a field like AI that's changing so fast, it comes with risk. But there's also the potential for big rewards.
So for someone who's looking at their portfolio and thinking about adding AMD, what should they be thinking about? What would you tell them?
Well, I always say you got to do your research and know how much risk you're comfortable with. But for AMD specifically, there are a few key things to keep in mind.
I'm listening.
Number one, AMD is changing big time. They're moving from being known mostly for CPUs to being a major player in the GPU and AI accelerator market. This change brings both opportunities and challenges.
So they're not a one-trick pony anymore.
Nope, they're branching out and betting big on the future of AI. Number two, their data center business is what's driving this growth, and it's attracting some serious attention from those big tech companies. This is something to watch closely.
Seems like that data center business keeps coming up. It's clearly a big deal.
It is. And number three, they're facing intense competition, not just from the giants like NVIDIA, but also from those newcomers like DeepSeek. The AI world is dynamic and always changing, so staying informed and being able to adapt is crucial.
It's like a high-stakes game of chess where every move matters. Speaking of moves, what do you think is AMD's next big strategic step? What should they focus on to really solidify their position in this AI-driven world? Hashtag TTS The Deep Dive, episode 2025-0209, part 3 of 3.
I think the key for AMD is partnerships. They got to build a really strong ecosystem.
Partnerships, okay.
Yeah, they need to convince those big tech companies, the ones with the huge data centers and the crazy AI projects, that AMD is the partner they can rely on for performance, scalability, and support. You know, the whole package.
Because it's not enough to just have the best chips.
Right. It's about more than that.
It's about building those relationships.
Absolutely.
Creating a community around your tech.
Exactly.
Can you give me an example of how that might actually work?
Sure. Like look at Microsoft. They're a big deal in cloud computing and AI with their Azure platforms. AMD's already working with them. They supply CPUs for their data centers.
Right.
So the next step would be to expand that partnership, get those MI300 accelerators in there. For AI workloads,
That makes sense. show Microsoft how valuable those AI solutions are, and that could spread to the rest of the industry.
Exactly. And it's not just about those big clients either. It's about working with software developers, researchers, startups.
Yeah.
AMD needs to create an environment where people are excited to build on their platform.
So playing the long game, building something sustainable that can adapt as AI keeps changing.
Right. Yeah.
It's like that David and Goliath thing we were talking about before. AMD has a history of going up against the big guys and coming out on top.
Yeah.
But do you think they still have that same fight in them?
I think so.
Yeah.
I really do. I see that same drive to innovate, to push the limits, their commitment to those cutting-edge technologies like the MI300 accelerators. That says a lot about their ambition.
It's cool to see a company that's willing to take risks and challenge the giants. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to bring it back to our listener. What are the main things you want them to remember about AMD and their role in the AI world?
I'd say there are three big things. Number one, AMD is a company that's on the move. They're transforming themselves into a major player in AI and their data center business. That's what's fueling this growth. Number two, their success depends on building a strong ecosystem around their tech, creating partnerships and collaborations that go beyond just the hardware. And number three, the AI world is constantly changing. It's super competitive. It's going to be interesting to see how AMD handles these challenges and finds its place in the future of AI.
This has been a really fascinating look at AMD and the AI landscape. I'm excited to see what happens next. What kind of breakthroughs and disruptions are coming?
That's the thing about tech. It's always evolving, always changing. There's always a new chapter.
And we'll be here to dive into those chapters, uncover the insights that help us understand what's shaping our world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.